Hey everyone, welcome back to Reissued. If you're new here, my name is Andrew. Today we're going to be decorating for Christmas, and more specifically, we're going to be recreating 2025 Christmas decor trends using trash, food, thrifted items, whatever I can find to get the look for cheap. Now, it feels a little bit early to be decorating for Christmas. At the time that I'm shooting this, we're not even halfway through November, but I wanted to be sure that if you want to create any of these projects at home, that you had a little bit of time to do that before we were fully into the season. Plus, I feel like time's going by so quickly, so before you know it, it's going to be Thanksgiving, and then it's going to be Christmas, so we might as well get it done now so we can enjoy it for the season. So let's turn on the Christmas music and get decorating. Okay, so first thing I'm gonna do here is get my trees up. Both of these Christmas trees were thrifted at the REISSUED, so these were secondhand and very affordable. This is actually the third year that I'm decorating for Christmas on my channel, so I have all of those videos in the Reissued Christmas playlist, so I'll link that down below if you wanna check those out and learn more about the thrifted and homemade decor that I've done already. Okay, so the first trend here that I actually really love is autumn Christmas. Now, this can be interpreted as like pumpkins and orange and traditionally autumnal things interpreted in a Christmas way. But what I've been seeing and what I really want to capitalize on is this kind of transitional period between Halloween and Christmas. Now, I love this because I don't really like to decorate for Christmas too early, but I think part of the reason that a lot of people do is that you finish with Halloween. Once you hit November 1st, Halloween no longer feels appropriate, and so you're pulling down all the decorations anyway, so you might as well put up Christmas at the same time. So what I like about this trend is it's a way to kind of ease into the Christmas spirit without seeing Santa everywhere on November 1st. So the way that I'm gonna interpret this trend is more about taking the decor that I did for Halloween and kind of pulling it through into a Christmas vibe. So first, I'm gonna keep some of the decor that was on the front table and just change out the candle colors so they feel less dark and spooky and more warm and bright. And then we're gonna transform this little arbor that we made out of yard trash and take it from a creepy swamp witch place to more of a winter wonderland kind of place. So Matt and I went scavenging around the neighborhood to find some really cool big sticks that we can fill this out with. Before we add anything to this, I went in with some clippers and took out all of the vines. I added this English ivy before that gave that kind of spooky grown over feel, but now they're all really dead and brown, which was okay for Halloween, but I want to make this more about like sticks and wood, kind of like a wintry wreath, rather than that kind of overgrown swamp vibe. And with all the ivy gone, we can start to add in a lot of these larger sticks. Now, we're tying everything up with twine. We're using like a cheap white twine anywhere that we're tying the sticks to the post so that it blends in the best. But in the places that we're tying sticks together, I'm using a natural color twine just to kind of help that blend in and give more of that earthy, woody vibe. Now, you may remember from my Halloween video that this natural arbor was kind of a response to the tension rod trend. That's where people put a tension rod across like a doorway or opening and use that as an attachment point for garlands or lights or anything festive that you want up and around the door. I love this as an alternative because we won't have to store any of this in the off season. All of the yard trash will just go out to the street again. It was totally free and super sustainable. Sustainability is another big trend that I've seen, which always makes me feel validated when the things that I love all the time are suddenly trendy. But yeah, the challenge here is that since we don't have any sort of tension rod or anything, we're having to kind of build this from the sides working inward, getting those outer sticks well attached so that they can support the weight of the center sticks. You doing your time lapse? Yeah. Definitely a time lapse, just move really slowly. Camera. Okay, so now we're ready to put up some lights, and I'm so excited to be featuring lights from Ollny, which is the sponsor of today's video. Now, if you've seen any of my holiday content like ever, you've definitely seen some lights from Ollny. They are my go-to for string lights. Just this year, I featured their outdoor lights from my Porch Refresh video. I used their Halloween spiderweb lights in my Halloween video, and this is the third time that I'm using their lights for Christmas. Now, when Ollny reached out to me this time, they were offering to send me a new product that they'd come out with, which looked really cool, but I was like, no, I want to feature the cluster lights because I'm obsessed with them. I love putting them on my tree. Basically, rather than having tons of cord with just a few lights in between, the cluster lights have tons of lights close together so that you can get maximum light impact here without spending hours weaving and trying to hide the cords. So as usual, I'm using the 400 light warm white cluster lights on my green Christmas tree. I think these look stunning here and create kind of a magical swoop around the tree. They come with a remote control. They have multiple different light settings, so they have tons of options. As usual, I'm gonna keep it simple and classic and just leave these on, but these could twinkle or flash, whatever you want them to do. For the white tree and the little arbor out front, I'm using their classic string lights. These ones have a clear cord, so they blend in so beautifully. All of these lights are okay for indoor and outdoor use, which is awesome. I always say here that, you know, we love thrifting, we love trash to treasure, but holiday lights are something that's so magical and festive, and you want something that's high quality, that's not gonna make you wanna tear your hair out putting it on the tree. So I think this is a great place to buy a new product that you know is gonna work, and it's gonna act as a great base for all of that thrifted and crafted decor that we're putting on top. If you're looking to upgrade your holiday string light game, I will link all of these products down in the description box below. If you're interested in these, I suggest you get them right away. The first year that I wanted to do these, the cluster lights were already sold out by the time my video went live. So I recommend jumping on these now. They're a total game changer. They've been lasting for me every year. These are actually my original cluster lights from 2 years ago that I'm putting up, and they're still holding up. So be sure to check out these Ollny lights. I'm gonna link them down below. All right, so next up, one of the trends that everyone says is dominating this season is vintage nostalgia vibes. So it's always funny to me when classic and vintage is trending because I know they're gonna manufacture a bunch of new stuff that looks old, which I'm not mad about that, but the best way to get the real deal is to go to the thrift store. Now, I haven't done that much thrifting for Christmas this year. I have just a couple of items here. In the past Christmas seasons, I've had a full thrift haul kind of situation, and most of the decor that I have is thrifted. So if you wanna know where I got these items, check out last year's video or the year before. But I'm gonna show you what I got this year. Again, not very many items, but I thought I'd show you just the same. All right, so this is it. I picked up this kind of bluey green garland in the Pittsburgh Thrift With Me video. That was one of the only things I got on that trip, and I really like it, and I'm excited to see how it looks on the tree maybe. At the REISSUED store, I got these 3 right here. I have a bunch of these little brass horns already, and I'm just gonna kind of add to that collection. I think it's a good idea to kind of pick some items that you collect as a part of your Christmas collection, rather than having one-offs of everything, unless they're really unique items. I think it can be good to sort of have multiples of the same thing. So I have a bunch of these, but what's a couple more for $1 a piece? I also thrifted a bunch of these large cranberry picks at the REISSUED store for $1 a piece. I got these to try on my arbor out front because I didn't want it to feel too creepy with all the sticks, so I thought some red berries would warm it up and also make it work with the wreath that I'm planning to put on the front door to kind of tie the red theme through and keep that kind of like classic winter wonderland look going. And finally, I got this little brass ornament at Goodwill. I think this was 50% off the March price, which makes this $1. Really like the kind of shape on this. I like that it's brass, it's classic, so I think this is gonna work really well on the tree as well. Okay, so I'm gonna jump in here and start the very daunting task of decorating my trees. Now, I am kind of excited because this year the placement is different. We did the green tree in the living room instead of on the front porch because I have a living room that's finished now. So I thought the green tree would be really warm and beautiful in here to give those nostalgic vibes. So we'll be on trend with that one. And then with the white tree, I generally put some more kind of kitschy, nostalgic pieces on this tree for kind of like a 50s, mid-century kind of feel. However, I think with the other decor that I'm gonna do out on the front porch, it's a little bit more winter wonderland, classic Christmas kind of vibes. So I'm gonna swap things around and put more of the kitschy, bright colored stuff on the green tree and move a lot of the more earthy, woody stuff out onto the white tree to give that more winter wonderland kind of vibe. While I'm deciding which ornaments go where, I'm gonna go ahead and place those cranberry picks on my arbor to kind of fill out that look a bit. I found that if they were really evenly spaced, it would look unnatural, so I'm grouping several together and focusing them mostly at the top and the center to give the most kind of natural feel. And then I'm adding some little wood ornaments as well to kind of tie everything together and make this feel a little bit more purposeful and ornamental. Alright, next trend here is food themed decor. I've been seeing candy garlands, glass food ornaments, and I find that these tend to be expensive or plastic or glittery, and I don't do any of those. So that got me thinking about what would be affordable that would also give an expensive look. And one of my favorite thrifted Christmas decor items are these beautiful glass candy canes. I wish I had more of these. I only have 4. I've looked into actually sourcing some other ones online and they can be pretty pricey. But then I was at Ollny's, which is kind of like a discount liquidation store, and I saw all of these like vintage style hard candies, and I thought, what if we used my leftover UV resin from the fireplace project to cover these and make our own kind of glass looking candy garland situation? So I did a little bit of research, and it is possible to coat candy in UV resin. A lot of people will arrange the candy in a tray and then pour resin over it to make like one solid piece. I'm wanting to coat each candy individually and have them still look like candy, but also like glass. So I'm gonna start here by spraying the candy with an acrylic clear coat that I had on hand. This was recommended in the examples I saw to provide a sort of a barrier to keep the colors from bleeding. I'm only choosing to use the candies that work with the color scheme that I'm going for, more in the red and green kind of realm. I'm also eliminating any candies with damage or cracks or any bits of other candy stuck to them. So I'm gonna spray these all over, moving them around to make sure I get them from all angles and then leave them to dry. Once these are dry, I can pull out my resin and get started with coating them. The candy canes were the easiest to do, so let's start with those. Basically, I just held them at one end and squeezed some resin onto the other end. I wanted just enough to be able to coat this fully, but not enough so that it's dripping off. And I tried to work pretty quickly and move this around, changing around different angles so that it wouldn't drip, as I used my silicone brush to spread it out. Once I got it pretty even over one section, I could cure it with my UV lamp and then move downward on the candy cane to the next section. Once that's cured, I can flip it around and hold it from the end that I've already done, just to get the little remaining areas. And even though I've cured this pretty well with the UV lamp, I am gonna go set these in direct sunlight to help them cure fully. For the little round hard candies, I wanted to create an attachment point so that I could wire these onto a garland. So I used small jewelry pliers and this jewelry wire to create these little tiny loops. Then I found it easiest to have a little drop of the resin on my cardboard work surface. Dip the candy in on one end and then use the jewelry pliers to help me hold it in place while I cured it with the lamp. Now, I am someone that has pretty good fine motor skills, but I hate working wearing gloves, but we do need to have gloves on here for safety, so I was struggling with this. Once I get the loop attached, I can cut a piece of wire to hook onto that loop. That helps me hold it while I coat the rest of the candy in resin. And finally, I thought these little candy ribbons would look super cute. I knew they were gonna be really difficult to coat, and I wasn't wrong. So I started the same way by making my little wire loops and attaching them so that I would have somewhere to hold on to. And then I tried to kind of work from the inside out, squeezing the resin down in between the folds to try to coat the inside as well as the outside. This was pretty challenging, and I'm not sure that I fully got there, but I did this in layers, going over it multiple times to try to get maximum coverage over the whole piece without getting any weird lumps or bumps or clumps of resin. Overall, this process was pretty satisfying, and the really glossy clear coat on top of these candies does really give them that convincing glass effect. And once all of my candies are done, I move them out into direct sunlight to help them cure completely. All right, the final trend here, which everyone says is like the trend of the year, Ralph Lauren inspired Christmas. It's about something classic and cozy and homey, lots of bows and tartan plaids and cable knits. Again, there's definitely certain overlaps here with vintage nostalgic Christmas, although maybe this is more of a 90s interpretation of that. The biggest element that I think is specific to this Ralph Lauren look is the tartan plaid, so that's what we're gonna try to incorporate here. Now, I knew that I wanted to do a new wreath for the front door. I was racking my brain for different ideas, but ultimately I think I'm gonna stick with this red berry wreath that I had already. I usually put this on the guest bathroom door, but I think it will look so beautiful outside on the front to tie into the red berries and that more natural look there. But I wanna jazz this up, so I was thinking a big tartan plaid bow would be a good element to add here. Now, yes, I could buy large ribbon anywhere, but the quality tends to be a little bit questionable. And one of the things about the Ralph Lauren Christmas style is about this kind of heirloom, high quality, great materials kind of element here. So I went to the thrift store and I picked up this women's plaid shirt for, I think it was $3. It was 50% off the marked price. This one, I don't feel bad cutting it up because it does have some discoloration on it. I think the navy and blue will be a nice contrast to the red here and introduce some more of that kind of heritage feeling. I'm deconstructing this shirt by just cutting it apart. Ordinarily, I would seam rip everything in case I need the seam allowance, but in this case, I don't think that I will, so I'm just gonna cut it apart for ease. I was on the hunt for the longest strips possible so that I could make this bow as big as possible, and so I started by cutting from the center of each sleeve, folding it in half, and then using my mat and rotary cutter to cut a 3-inch strip. So this is actually 6 inches wide, but I cut it on the fold. I followed the same process on the back of the shirt, going along the back dart seams. Now, tip here, if you can thrift a men's item, that is preferable because men's items tend to have fewer seams. Since a lot of women's items are cut to hug a curvier body, so this does have back darts on it, whereas a men's shirt would not and just be all one piece. So I am having to maneuver and be a bit more wasteful in the way that I'm using the fabric in order to get the pieces that I need. The sleeve strips are gonna be the long dangling pieces, and the back strips are gonna make up the sides of the bow. Now, at this point, I wanted to make the best use of the rest of the shirt, and so I cut it up into strips and was gonna sew those to make some smaller bows as well. Unfortunately, I cut these strips to like 1.5 inches each, and by the time I sewed them and turned them, they were just way too small. They were like spaghetti straps, and it didn't look good, and it was gonna be way too hard to do, so I couldn't end up using them, which was kind of a bummer. However, in the process of cutting this apart, I cut the collar and the front button placket off, and I realized that it kind of made a cool bow on its own. It's funny how the best solutions are often the most simple. But let's carry on with the strips that we cut to make our bow. I'm starting by combining these into one long strip, pinning the 2 outside pieces on each side together, right sides together, and sewing them with my sewing machine. Then I can join those 2 strips in the center to have one long piece with all 4 strips sewn end to end. At that point, I can fold the full strip in half lengthwise, right sides together, and pin it all the way down in preparation for sewing. As I sew, I allow each end to follow the natural curve of where the shoulder seam was cut. This will finish things off in kind of a curved, pointed shape, and I make sure to stop for a couple inches in the middle so that I have an open place in the seam to turn this right side out after sewing. And now I can turn it right side out and iron it all the way along to press out the seams and make this look crisp and beautiful. To complete this bow, I'm folding it into the right shape, lining up all the seams so that they'll be hidden by the piece that wraps around the center. And for the piece that wraps around the center, I'm just using one of the cuffs that I cut off my shirt. I'm folding it in half to hide the raw edges, wrapping it around a couple of times so it's nice and tight, and then hand sewing it into place. I thought that our tartan bow would look nice on top of the white tree, and apparently I thought wrong. I think it was a little bit too droopy for this kind of application. Originally, I had intended to put this bow on the wreath, but I felt that the collar with the button placket actually looked a lot better and felt very reissued. So instead, I decided to hang it on the chain that was draped over the mirror for my Halloween decor. Again, we're pulling that through into the next season, and I think that that works much better to give some height to this front table display, and also allow the bow to look its best with more of a droopy kind of posture. And to complete the bow a little bit, I'm gonna clip some little red berries from the yard and poke them in through the sides just to give this a burst of color and freshness. So for the collar, I get this into the bow shape that I want, and again, go in and hand stitch it into place. Note that I'm being sure to pull the placket slightly open in a diagonal so that it will give more of that bow shape when it's hanging on the wreath. And now I can stick a twist tie through the back to attach this to the wreath. To tie in the tartan plaid to my front porch tree, I thrifted these 2 spools of ribbon for 25 cents each at the REISSUED. They didn't have as much ribbon on them as I was hoping for, so I wasn't able to get too much out of them. But I was able to create a couple of bows out of the larger ribbon, putting some twist ties through behind so that I can affix them to the tree. And I used the smaller ribbon as a way to tie on some more glass ball ornaments. One little tip here, if you're thinking that you want to change up your Christmas decor every year but don't want to go out and buy all new items, I think it's good to have some really classic pieces on hand with some glass balls and some beaded garlands, maybe in a couple different colors. That way you can change things up from year to year by working from that core collection. Maybe you divide up those elements evenly for a unified look. Maybe you divide things out by color to have some variety. Not only does this allow you to come up with a different kind of look every year, but it also makes it a little bit more interesting. I feel like I just decorated for Christmas yesterday, and doing it exactly the same way every year can be a bit tedious, so it's good to have those classic basics so you can change it up. I'm adding a very subtle touch of bling to the green Christmas tree with this Williams-Sonoma garland that my mom got for me. It was super on sale at the end of last season, and we both agreed it was really beautiful, so I think it's gonna add just a little bit of sparkle here. When in doubt with shopping for Christmas decor, I think it's great to be thinking about quality materials. Glass, crystal, metal, wood, natural fibers. These are gonna look more high-end, but also be super durable to live on as heirloom pieces. So now we have all the pieces in place and we're ready to put it all together. On the living room mantle, I start by placing these 3 thrifted stocking holders. Then I can add some red wood beaded garlands that will become the foundation for my candy garland. On either end, I'm hanging these cream cable knit stockings that I made myself. I mentioned those in my crafting video. I think these are super classic and cozy and definitely give us those Ralph Lauren vibes. And now we're ready to start attaching our candies. First, I create some attachment points on the candy canes by wrapping some wire around the top end of the candy cane, twisting it into place so that everything stays firmly attached. And I'm following that same process for the glass candy canes as well. I'm placing the larger candies first to get a good sense of the layout, and then filling in with the smaller candies. To affix the candies to the garland, I'm very carefully wrapping them around in between the beads, making sure that I get a full loop and squeezing it tight so these don't run the risk of falling off. I will say that this process was incredibly delicate, both at the resin attachment point with the wires to the smaller candies, also with this thin pliable wire, also because these hard candies are breakable. I know because I dropped one and it shattered, so I tried to breathe and take my time with this. To finish off the mantle, I'm hanging this little $1 embroidered ornament that I thrifted this year to kind of tie all the colors together and give us that real vintage nostalgic look. And that brings me to my final project here. I've been thinking about, with the resurgence of this like nostalgic kind of 90s trend, about the way things actually were in the 90s and the way that that felt at the time. And everything was a little bit less curated and a little bit more homemade and definitely more personal, but not necessarily aesthetic. So I was thinking about how to tie together the personal and the aesthetic. And I was thinking about this vintage frame that I got at the movie prop warehouse sale with Matt. And I've been waiting for the right application for this. And I thought it might be really beautiful to put a personal photo that represented this year inside. So while my parents and Matt and I were decorating the front porch, I got everybody together and we stamped a photo, and I'm gonna print that out to go in this frame. Now, 2 tips here that I think will help give you the best results. 1, Pick a gorgeous vintage frame or something, again, that is high quality materials, much better than something plasticky or cheapy or overly Christmas themed. And my second tip here is, rather than having photos that are overly posed or that feel forced, where you get everyone together and it takes forever for them to take the picture, find a moment where everyone feels kind of happy and light and joyful, and bring everyone together and say, look at the camera, and snap a couple pictures and then be done. Maybe it's not going to be the most aesthetic or the most perfect picture ever, but it's going to be a little bit more authentic that way. I think it's better to capture an authentic moment that the people in the photo can look at and be like, yeah, that was kind of a good time, rather than everyone looks at a photo that looks good on the surface, but they know how uncomfortable they were or how annoying it was to take a photo that day. So better to capture a moment as it really happened and have everyone remember it that way. On the back of the photo, I'm gonna write our names and the year. This seems kind of weird, but I've noticed on a lot of my vintage photographs that people like to write names and dates on them, and I appreciate that so much. As someone that's coming across it in the future, it's really interesting to name those unknown faces in the picture and to have a sense of the time. So I'm gonna write that on the back here. If I had a gold Sharpie or gel pen, I might have just written it right across the bottom of the front. I think that would have looked great, but I don't have that on hand today, so I'm gonna write it on the back instead. As a final Ralph Lauren inspired detail, I'm placing these wool blankets out on the front porch and in the living room. These were actually sent to me by a subscriber a couple years back, and I think they're really cool. I haven't really found a place for them up until now, but I think they feel so appropriate for this trend and for the holiday season, and I think they bring everything together. All right, everybody, I can't wait to show you the reveal on this one. I really hope you like how these projects turned out. It's fun to change things up and get new inspiration, so I hope you like how I interpreted these trends. Again, if you want more holiday crafting and decor tips and tricks, I will link the reissued Christmas playlist down below. If you enjoyed this video and it got you in the holiday spirit, go ahead and hit the like button, hype this video, hit the subscribe button while you're at it, go crazy. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys soon. Bye.